Welcome to URL Unzip, Reboot and Leave, a podcast about the psychology of everything. Today, our guest is Lorena Chiu, a computer engineer, a mother of two college going adults, and a true Silicon Valley native. Born in LA and raised in Valley, she has witnessed its transformation over the decades. We explored how community culture and mindset necessary to assimilate in the Valley. So, Lorena, the first question to you is, as you can see, I'm Indian origin, and unfortunately, in today's day and age, in Indian community, they still carry burden of caste, region, religion, gender biasness. Maybe you won't see it upfront, but back of their mind or within their community. Just as an outsider, I would like to know how in Chinese clan you guys see it, or not at all see it.
Yeah, that's a great question. So in China, now this is something that I've learned from the history books because I don't personally live in China. I live in the United States. China went through a very different trajectory regarding the social hierarchies, right? We used to have a very rigid system, the scholar, farmer, artisan, merchant in those descending order. That was actually dismantled in the 20th century during the revolution. But the thing is that the I guess there are differences in terms of class, and it's actually changed right over time. For example, in China, and this is what I learned doing a bit of research, is that China has different forms of inequality, right? We have the system between the rural versus the urban areas, different disparities between coastal versus inland. And of course, there's also gender biases. I don't think that as much as we try to stamp out gender biases, there's a lot of cultural preferences that still exist today, although I know that there's been a lot of effort in trying to stamp that out. And I think that's true for someone who's born in the United States, right? I mean, there are, certain families do hold on certain very traditional values that may impact how your experience is here. I've just been very fortunate that both my parents are very progressive and they've been very nurturing. And so I didn't really feel that here in the States. It's more of really trying to carve out your own existence and really trying to adapt to two cultures, right? Being born in the United States, what you learn from school and your friends, and then the values that your parents bring to you because of your ethnicity. And so there's always a balancing act between the two.
Okay. Like when you are actually migrating and with whom you are migrating. For example, I came to Australia when I as a student, so there was no sort of ecosystem came with me. But when
Yeah.
the service companies are bringing like a professionals from their own country, like let's say IT, they are coming in hundreds, so they have their ecosystem.
Yes.
And living in which suburb, that also
Mm.
kind of create a lifestyle where they have that particular clan heavy, and
Yeah.
they are assimilating more into the local culture and all. So in
Yeah.
India we have seen all these things around 10-15%. This is just like from my head. One
Yeah.
in five maybe they are assimilating good with the local culture, local food. Rest all
Uh,
try to keep it within their own clan.
yeah.
What about what about Chinese
Yeah.
population?
Yeah, there what you share has a lot of similarities, but I think the key thing is that the definition of assimilation varies from individuals and family experience. Um, so now I can only speak to the San Francisco Bay Area, but in the late 1800s, early 1900, there were a lot of Chinese from the Guangdong province area immigrating to United States to help with the gold rush and building the railroad. And so at that time, we faced a lot of discrimination. And so these men created these family association. And so that when you arrive from your village coming over to a new country, your family association helps you with adapting to the new world, to the culture, to the language. What do you do when you want to send money back to your home country, and how do you buy stamps, and basic living activities. And that's something that was very much a big part of my family history, in depending on the family association, just to kind of get adapted to this new world. Now, my parents came from China to this new world. I was born here. So my experience was very different, right? I was born here in Los Angeles, grew up in the Bay Area, and, just kind of was more navigating because my parents still held on to a lot of their um, cultural preferences and learnings that they grew up with. And they were trying to do their best to pass down my heritage, the history, the culture, the music, the language, the food. And so they did a lot of effort in trying to make sure that they understand and that I understand where my family origin came back from. So, but I think it's very different. My children are second generation, and, it's a very different approach because I don't have ties to China. And I'm born here. I view myself as American, born, raised in the United States. There's no other country that I've ever lived in. And so while I may look ethnically Chinese, but I am ethnically Chinese, but I am American. And if you took me and put me in another, like in China, I would have to learn the culture, learn the language, and adapt. This is true for anybody going to any country. Um, and so, it's kind of hard to say there's like a what percentage of people assimilating to the culture. It really depends on their personal experience. Some people had a really positive experience where they're able to adapt pretty quickly. And if you come when you're really young, you go to middle school, high school, some people adapt so well that you can't tell that they were not born in the United States. And other people struggle. And so it really depends on the individual of, whether you're able to, have a really positive experience when you arrive to this country, and then learning, having a great support system, your friends, your coworkers who are kind enough to, show you the way, right? And there's all sorts of great people around this world. It's just when you are fortunate enough to meet like-minded individuals, it doesn't matter where you're from, but you connect in that level, it doesn't really matter. So
Mm,
I
mm.
answered the question there.
Nicely said. Nicely said. So now I will go little different side of it, which is woman in tech.
Okay.
And you worked in Valley area for 3 decades, 4 decades, something like that.
Yeah.
Uh, and you have seen a huge change, I'm sure, last two
Yeah.
decades, right?
Hmm?
So first is like those women who are highly educated in their mid-career often feel burnout, enough, and all these kind of stuff. What kind of like silent battle you see, which not necessarily come out, mainstream?
Well, here's the thing. So in the 1970s, there was this myth of like having it all. I still remember this commercial on TV where they were selling perfume, and it was telling you, the women, and I was a very young girl at the time, that you can be a career woman, you can be a partner, you can be a mom, you can do everything, and you can have it all. But the reality is that, and you and I both know that as we get older, is that our time is finite. There's only 24 hours in a day. We still need so much sleep to recharge. And then you have to pick your battles, and, as a mom of two, college age children, I remember it was a struggle, um, where, you have your day job and your work is a lot of mental load. And then you come home and you pick up your kids and you're now trying to switch your brain to gotta go and now, okay, I'm going to try to keep like, how are I'm going to help them with their homework? And then you're supposed to cook dinner at the same time. And then you have laundry and then you have, and I think the challenge is that this is where I tell a lot of young women is that it, the big difference is that this is where we need to have honest conversation with our partners on what is realistic and finding that partner to be with you every step of the way. I feel like it's very unfair to expect the men who gets married, they work 8 hours, women works 8 hours, but they get to come home and relax and recharge in front of the TV or in front of their gaming station while we have to do everything else. And this like, why is that the case? And so I've been very fortunate with my husband that we decided early on, like, he wanted a very clean household and I'm a little bit laissez-faire about it because to me that wasn't important. It was what's more important was getting food on the table or, making sure the kids were okay. So it's all about priorities. And so we
Mhm.
had to give. And one of the things is like, okay, we had to get help, right? So like we would have a cleaning team that would come in and help me clean. There's like, so this is something that I had to negotiate with my spouse to be able to say, honestly, like, if you want certain things, you need to contribute. Either you do the work or you have to pay for someone to do the work, right? And I think it's really unfair because there are a lot of families that are struggling. And what do you do then? And or sometimes family structures don't allow them. I've had folks, I used to manage a very large organization, and I had folks that I felt like was super talented, um, and I would encourage them to take on more leadership role, and they've had very direct response. And these are Indian engineers, Indian female engineers, and they've told me, like, Lorena, we can't take on anymore. As much as I appreciate you wanting to promote me in my career, but I have no one to care for my children. I still have to pick up. I still got to do all that stuff. And they feel so overwhelmed. And that's where I get a little frustrated as a leader because I would love for women to be able to have those opportunities. And a lot of times they end up stepping back from their career because they don't have the support they need. And that to me as a leader in tech, I find very frustrating because I know there's a lot of bright individuals out there who are burdened with, you know, somewhat more of a very traditional cultural expectations that may be put upon them,
Mm.
right?
I mean, not necessarily from that point. This is definitely like one of the major areas. In my experience, one of my friends, he wanted to leave his job and then uh, to be an entrepreneur, and that's how he was kind of saving up. And then suddenly his parents got sick in India, and that kind of carried away for more than 2 3 years. Then he
Yeah,
lost his job, lost his wife's job. So the whole thing got so fragile that
yeah.
the mindset got shifted, and it took like 5 years from his life, and he's now saying, should I really gone into this or not? So sometimes like things needs to happen also in your.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, so this is where, your friend is a very, thank you for sharing your friend experience, and I'm really sorry that that happened to him. Uh, these experiences, they're all really unique, right? And, I have former coworkers who went back to India to care for an aging parent, and then, their children had a really difficult time adapting to the culture, especially if you were born and raised and you were going to school and then you switched to a very different educational system. It was a very jarring experience. He ultimately brought his family back to the States. Some individuals, they were able to bring their kids back when they were super young, and so they were able to adapt. And so, it really depends on, again, it goes back to everybody's experience is very different. But when it comes to women in tech, the key thing is really, making sure that we have conversations with our partners about what we can or willing be able to do.
Mm,
Um, because if the expectation is that we get married as women, even though we have higher education, we're successful in a career, but the expectation is for us to give up our career to be a family person, that is a conversation that needs to be had. I think women do carry a lot of mental load and the workload when it comes to the family. Not that we're complaining about it. A lot of women who actually given up their career are very, very happy with their decision. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that as long as the couple makes that decision collectively to work together, I think that is one way of battling it out. Now,
mm,
to be able to do all of it, I don't even have an answer because I've tried and I can tell you honestly, it doesn't work.
mm,
Um, there are many moments where I do not do home cooked meals, especially when I was working a lot of hours. I come out of my office and the kids are telling me hungry, and I say, me too, and let's go out to eat. And so that leads to bad habits, right? Making bad health decisions because you're so tired and you're going out to eat because that's your survival. You don't have any more mental cycles. And I do remember those days because, when you're trying to wear so many hats, I think it's we as humans need to remind ourselves that we need to also take care of ourselves. Because if we're
mm,
sick, who's going to take care of us?
mm,
So.
mm. Sure. Because you're born and raised in US or in Valley, near Valley area, so I'm calling you as local that
Yes,
way.
play local in that
Silicon
regard.
Valley, yeah, you are local. So Silicon Valley has a particular obsession with speed, scale, unicorn, be in the media and all these kind of stuff.
Mhm.
How local process it? I mean, for first generation immigrants, it take like probably 20, 30 years to understand it properly, and by the time they are in the retirement age. So how this rush local see it or local take it?
I don't think I think it really depends on the individual. I've actually had the fortune to meet a, a Indian immigrant to the Bay Area and now is a billionaire. And it's about mindset and how you look at things, right? If you were given lemons, are you going to make lemonade? Or are you going to cry about the lemons that you do have? And so it really depends. And it doesn't have to be Silicon Valley, it could be anywhere um, in the world. It's all about, I think, the fact that we have the internet and we have all this technology, and now with AI, I mean, everything is moving so fast. And so we, I think I don't know if it's uniquely Silicon Valley. Yes, historically, and I was here when this was more orchard. And Silicon Valley, I still remember there's many parts of the town that I grew up had a lot of orchard land. There were a lot of land. And that has all transformed where you have big office buildings, big data centers, a adjacent parking lot structure, because this is where a lot of technology. And, depending on the company that you join, you will get to meet very, very highly intelligent individuals collectively put in a small area. And that enthusiasm and the passion really feeds itself, in that ecosystem. The one thing about Silicon Valley is that, it is a small world. And it doesn't take that many degrees of separation to know someone who is wildly successful or know someone who is a VC or an ex-CEO and so forth. So I think that's where I think geographically that's where it is. I think there's a lot of talented individuals all around the world. It's about how do you get that idea down on paper to execution and inspiring the people that what you believe in will work for them, right? I think that's really where that really comes in, that what's that secret sauce.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm. Okay.
yeah,
Now I will come to this like valley in general. Okay.
yeah,
And
Uh-huh.
the first question is how second generation see the first generation immigrants. Okay, this is a very deep question. Okay, maybe it sounds very simple.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what is your answer to that?
What does the second generation sees first generation?
Hmm.
Well, here's the thing. So my parents are the first, I would consider my parents first generation arriving to the United States, although my grandparents and my great grandparents were also here in the valley or in, in San Francisco Bay Area. Um, but I was the first to be born here. So I think the experience is a little bit different. My mom and dad did share their journey of arriving to the United States, how they had to there was no such thing as Google Translate, right? I mean, when my mom went to college, they literally had to look in a Chinese English dictionary and they had to manually translate every single word in that sentence, in that paragraph. And then once they finished the manual translation, then they would go back and read the whole thing again. So they still have their old textbooks. And in their old textbook, they actually have Chinese written in it so they can translate. And that was it was a very big journey for them. Right here, we just take a document, even when you get a text today on your phone, and then you can just hit translate and it'll translate everything. It's pretty relatively accurate, but it does a really good job. And so I think they have the struggles that we didn't have the struggle. Being born here, I didn't have to worry about the translation of English. You naturally learn that in school. You naturally will learn the American culture, about the pilgrims coming over to the United States, and how our country came about and all these things about our culture, you learn that naturally through the school. I think this upcoming generation is very, very different, right? You and I probably grew up in the area where we didn't have a phone. I still remember as a kid, in the summertime, I wanted to go ride my bike and, run outside and ride my bike around the neighborhood. My parents didn't really worry. It was thirsty. There was no bottled water. I just turned on the hose and drank from the hose itself. It was just very different world where, my kids' generation were born in the digital generation. They look at things very differently. How they navigate on the phone, how they organize data, how they even like social media and how they post information is very different from how we see it. Like I am a lot more conservative. I really don't post that many pictures. Once in a while, I have a couple. But these kids, they'll take a picture of what they ate and they'll send it out to their friends. Or they'll take a picture of their outfit and they'll send it out and give me likes. Tell me whether this is a great outfit or vote for me. This outfit one, outfit two. And so they're more they have a very different mindset than what we have. Like I didn't get my first cell phone until I was already working. I remember when I was working for the first time and pagers were a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody who had a pager was very special. And if you got an alphanumeric pager, that was even more wow factor. My kids and I know this may be a local thing, but a lot of kids in middle school would get cell phones. I don't know if that's true. And a lot of it is, parents are now trying to keep track of their kids. They have so many activities. They need to figure out where are they going and so forth. So it's a very different world that I'm still learning and I'm still adapting. My children still educate me and say, "Mom, did you know you can navigate to this feature by going through this way versus the way I've been going through?" So it's a very different thing. Everything is changing rapidly.
Yeah, like some of the stuff, like you have to do it. You have no other choice because there are a lot of things coming digitally from school also. So you have to have a gadget. But again, like what you are going in the gadget to see, that's another whole thing. And yeah, it's very complicated now. That's for sure. That's for sure.
Their mindset is very different. They look at things, and it's not wrong or anything. It's just that they have been brought up with a very different construct in
mm,
their world. And
mm.
so they see things differently than what we may see. And I hope they learn from our mistakes and carry forth all the things that we do well.
So,
So
what is next generation bringing to take our business that really like set them apart from the previous generations, in your opinion?
yeah, I think, like before, like for to build a company, let's just say like your friend who wants to do it, in the old days, it was very hard, right? You would have to, the internet didn't exist. So you would have to be an expert in your field. You have to go to the library, do a lot of research, look at articles. A lot, as you can tell, there are a lot of information that were very much dated, not real-time information. Now, and now when you do AI search, it is almost instantaneous, where you're able to gather so much information and you can have AI teach you in a very short amount of time about any topic at any level of depth based on your curiosity. And this is where, how to harness it. I know there's a huge push for going into AI, but, I look at it as a new technology. It's very disruptive. No disagreement about that, right? The key is, what are you really trying to do? You really understand what problem are you trying to solve? And that's where AI really can aggregate a large amount of data in a very succinct, cohesive manner that is consumable by the masses. And I think that's where I think, while jobs may be closing down in certain areas, but jobs will be opening in others, right? I mean, like, think about it. Like, gas lamps, right? Just think about it. In the 1800s, there used to be a gas lamp lighter, right? So when it got dark, the guy would go around every street and light the street light with a gas torch, right? He would do this every single place. Now, when we had electricity, that job changed. But guess what? Yes, that role disappeared, but other roles popped up. And I feel that there will be other roles. There's a lot of conversation about certain roles going away, but I'm pretty sure there will be doors that will be opening for new roles that could be happening. When you want to build a company, you had to be a full stack engineer and you had to do all this stuff. And so you had to partner. Now in this new world, it's all about understanding the problem. And if you have an idea that will solve that problem, there's a lot of tools out there that can make it easier for you to achieve that goal faster, quicker, better than what we had previously.
So definitely, I mean, and another thing, in my opinion, is this new generation, they have more empathy
Empathy.
because, yeah, because they probably grow up with more resources than our generation. So in one way can be, they say like they don't understand this loyalty, they don't understand, they don't really value what you don't have and all these things, but simultaneously they also have a good deal of empathy. They
Yeah.
really want to do good for the bigger society and all these things. I am finding it again and again and again.
Yeah. And I think that's a wonderful trait this new generation has. They are very mindful of the mental load that they're experiencing and being authentic and a lot of empathy, really understanding. I think there's a lot of tools out there and a lot of content out there that can help people have a better understanding. Like before in the past, let's just say that you were have a certain personality trait, and most people wouldn't know what to do with that particular personality trait. Now there's so much resource out there that you can learn, here are the triggers for this person with this personality trait. These are the ways that you can help them become a better person and mitigate some of the, personality traits. So there's a lot of content out there, and this new generation is a lot more, have a lot more awareness.
Mm, mm,
Growing up, we didn't, I'm a Gen X, and so we weren't really worried. We weren't raised on that kind of mentality. I think a lot of it is because we didn't have the awareness.
mm, mm. Okay. Because you are in Valley area for a long time, when definitely new people are going into Silicon Valley, the first focus is survival for sure. And then
Yeah.
finding house, finding job, these things are getting maybe, tougher and tougher and whatever. But beyond all these logistics, what does it take to feel like you belong there in Valley area, especially? Okay, the reason I'm asking it because I live in Australia. I've been to US in few places. For some reason, I feel at home in Valley. I don't
Okay.
feel that in New York or any other place as such.
Oh, I think it's a
The energy,
yeah. Oh, I don't know about that. I just feel like well, I mean, as much as I've traveled like to Austin and to New York and, in Salt Lake City, and they're all wonderful places, I have not spent enough time to really talk about those particular areas. I think there's many, depends on the role that you were in when you come, right? For example, if you're a child coming into the United States, your ecosystem, it's all about your friends at school and how your parents arrange play dates or after school programs, and that's how you meet your friends. And I think children are very, very adaptable, and they get assimilated pretty quickly, right? Because play is play, having
yeah,
fun is fun, right? I mean, it doesn't matter what country you're at, laughter is universal. And so I think those are the biggest adapt. Those kids can adapt pretty readily. As you get older and you are now in college, it's the same thing, right? You will find your like-minded individual friends based on your personal interests, whether it's music or art or sports or whatever passion you may have, you will end up finding your people, right? People as in, people who have share the same passion, not based on your ethnicity or your where the country you come from. It's all about, you know, information exchange and sharing ideas and further learning from each other, right? I think that's hopefully where people are spending time. For those who are coming in for work, it's all about your coworkers, right? You're when you come into a company, you have your company culture and you're learning your job there, and you will learn to adapt, right? If you're successful in your home country, you will be successful in any other country, right? If you're shy in your home country, you will be shy in wherever you are. That's not going to change, right? You're going to have to figure that part out. I think what will be hard for someone who would come to United States, but then uh, you're usually it's a housewife, right? Woman who did not get a work visa and now they're raising children. And so how do you find their footing, right? And I think that is where, there may be some more challenges because there's not a structured way to get integrated, right? Work and school and college is a very structured way to get integrated, assimilated or adapt to a new culture. When you're at home and you're taking care of the house and you don't have much interaction, you will feel isolated. And and
and
this is where,
that is also a good solid portion of the population are like that.
yeah, yeah. And this is where, what you mentioned earlier about, individuals living in the same communities, and maybe through their temple or through their church, maybe they'll find a congregation or a place, a community where they feel like they can belong. Like every human person wants that, right? And so it's about finding, that group of people that will make you feel that way. I don't know if Silicon Valley is unique in that regard. I think every place has that. It's just a matter of having the the know-how or where to go find that,
Mm, mm,
right? I think
mm.
that's where the resources are, like, and if that is available.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, I think that's where, again, it really boils down to the individual.
Mm. So we are almost in the wrapping up stage. So
Mhm.
the final question to you is, I know you are pausing at the moment,
Yes.
okay?
Yes.
And you don't and you don't know how long you will pause, but you are pausing and
Yes.
pausing gracefully and joyfully.
Yes.
How Valley look at this enough versus never enough psychology?
I think it goes back to the individual. In terms of, I don't think it's a valley thing. I think it's all about the individual in terms of when is enough is enough. Um, some people can be wildly successful, but they still think it's not enough. And then there's people who are very, very happy with what they have. And to others, they may seem that that's not much. So happiness is really dependent on, and enough is really depend on the individual's definition of what is enough. To me, enough is just, listen, to me is I look at it as happiness. What is your happiness factor? And happiness doesn't mean money. Happiness could be, you know, spending time with friends and family and doing your favorite hobby or researching or spending time with, doing a service activity. Everyone has a different love language. Everybody has their own values and everyone has their own what satisfies them, right? And I think this is why, as humans, there's so much individuality that I think it's so exciting, to learn. So, I don't know if I'm not really answering your question. Like in Silicon Valley, yeah, there are people who are always going to be gunning for, working for the next big company. Yes, there are people out there, absolutely, and they will do whatever they can to get there. And then there's people who are just very fortunate, very lucky, and did very well, and they're very content. They're happy, right? And then there's people who are chasing a dream, not there yet, and they're going from job to job, right? It depends on the individual. Most Silicon Valley companies fail. I think it's like a 0.001% of success.
Is that
Right.
bad?
Yeah, it is. Because, if you think about it, um, if you look at the statistics of starting up a startup, first of all, you must have a great solution to an existing problem for the masses, right? And sometimes you may have that great idea. Maybe you have bad timing. Maybe you didn't get funding. Maybe you have the wrong message, or you may have the right solution, but you didn't market it well. You may not have the right partners, or you may not have the right people, right? There's so many variables that can basically not be successful, right? So it's not like these people are bad people. It's just that, sometimes things don't work out. And so the question is, do you have do you have it? Do you have what it takes to make it happen? Do
Mhm.
you have that blind faith and that persistence and that curiosity to make things happen, right? Doing startups is not for everybody. Everybody comes over to Silicon Valley and say, I want to do a startup. But the reality is not everybody is cut out to be doing startup. Some people are great at large companies. Some people are great at mid and small companies. It again goes back to your own personal experience and what makes you happy and what makes you tick. So, for people to think that I'm going to land in Silicon Valley and that, fly into SFO or, San Jose Airport and ride the golden, ticket to, super success, maybe a little bit different expectation when they first show up, right? I think it's all about finding that true self. It doesn't have to be in Silicon Valley. You could be in your home country. You can be wildly successful in Australia, in India, in China, in any country, right? It's all about really understanding what problem you're solving and do you have the right solution for that problem And do you have the right messaging and and all those why?
Mm.
You know, um, I think that's where people kind of get caught up. Yes, there's a lot of people who are passionate around this area. Yes, there's a lot of VCs in this area. Yes, I acknowledge every single one. And yes, there's a lot of people chasing that dream.
What I really like about this valley area is if you are saying something which may sounds very weird, no one asks you why you are saying that, which is a that barrier we normally cross in other places, at least in Australia for sure. You know,
Hmm.
either there is no market, this thing and that thing. How I can make this happen? The whole discussion kind of shifted to, oh, this doesn't have any market. So,
Yeah.
but I really like that energy in Valley, and
Opportunity to speak with you and share some of my ideas. I mean, again, this is just one person who happened to live in the Silicon Valley from that one perspective. I'm definitely not the de facto expert in a lot of things that I share.
no,
These
no,
are just like,
it's just because I am a big believer of lived experience. So I am
yeah.
working in mental health digitization, you know that. So, and I am a
Mm.
lived experience of that. So lived experience has that innate quality of empathy and understanding. So
Yeah, and I think that's the key thing is really, I always love to hear people's stories because this is something that you can learn.